Well, students, this is Guruji Online, and from today, we are going to start one by one each chapter of physics subject from the NCERT book. And today's lecture is confined to the chapter Unit and Dimension. So let us see what are the things inside this chapter, what are the concepts, and how we can learn about unit and dimensions. Now, let us start with units and measurement. So basically, what are units? So this paragraph, what I have taken from the NCERT book, which reads as the units for the fundamental or base quantities are called fundamental or base units. So basically, first of all, in this sentence, what is fundamental or base quantities? Fundamental and base quantities are nothing but length, mass, time. These have been taken as fundamental quantities, fundamental physical quantities, you can say. And what are their units? Length is measured in meter, mass is measured in kilogram, and time is measured in second. So this is fundamental units. So these are fundamental units associated with fundamental physical quantities. This you have to be very clear. What are fundamental physical units, physical quantities, and what are fundamental or base unit associated with these? Now it says the units of other physical quantities. Other means any other physical quantities apart from these. Like if we take the example of force, the unit of this physical quantity, force, can be derived from this base units like this. We know force is equal to m into A or kg into meter per second square. These are base units. From these base units, we have derived the unit of this other physical quantity. So there are lot many physical quantities are there, but their units we can derive from the base units. This is what it is called. This is called fundamental units, and this is called derived unit. And this fundamental units and derived units, they all together make system of units. So from here, you must have understood what is system of units. System of units consists of fundamental units and plus derived units. Correct? And you also got the idea of what are physical fundamental quantities. Basically, there are 7 physical quantities. We will go into detail in our next slide. But length, mass, time, these are basically the fundamental quantities, physical quantities. So now we will go to the next slide. Now, what is International System of Units? Basically, today we follow the SI units as the International System of Units. But before that, there was CGS system of units which was followed. CGS system is nothing but centigram, centimeter, where length units were taken as centimeter, mass was taken as gram, time was taken as second. In FPS system, that is called foot pound second system, that is length was taken as in foot, mass was taken in pound, and this was in second. Basically, 1 pound is nothing but 0.45 kg, almost half a kg. Then came the system of MKS system, that is metric system, and in this meter, kilogram, second, those were followed as the units of fundamental physical quantities, and our SI unit is just the extension of this MKS system, and it was found very useful in the sense because the units are in the units of tens, like 1 meter is nothing but 10 decimeter, is nothing but 100 centimeter, it is nothing but 1000 millimeter. So like that, they were in the form of this tens, hundreds and thousands. So it was very easy for the conversion sake. So that's why this system of units followed. Now this is called basically SI unit. It has drawn its name from the French, that is Système International des Units. It is the French name, and this is, we in the short form we call it as SI units. In SI unit, basically what are fundamental units, fundamental physical quantities. Fundamental physical quantities are again length, mass, time, but then again in electricity there came as current, and current that could not be defined by this length, time and mass units. So it was taken as fundamental physical quantity. Then apart from current, then of course temperature was another physical quantity. It was taken as physical quantity, fundamental physical quantity. And then in chemistry, mole, it was again taken as fundamental physical quantity, and then to measure the intensity of light, it was taken. So these 7 were taken as fundamental physical quantities, and their unit was taken as meter, mass it is kg, time it is second, current is ampere, temperature of course it was taken on the Kelvin scale, and chemistry substances were measured in moles, and this was measured in candela. So these are the fundamental physical quantities and their units. So you remember all these things. Their definition is also given in NCERT chapter, but you need not remember the figures, all those, but you must have an idea. So please go through those definitions. So these are basic thing. And in this chapter you are reading all these things, because if you leave from this chapter, then in any other chapter you are not going to read all these things. But you are going to use all these units in all other physics chapters. So it is better you understand here itself. Now we go to the next slide. Now we will talk about measurement of length. How you are going to measure any length. For normal lengths, there is no problem. Meter scale is there. For a smaller length, if you want to measure them with precision, then vernier caliper is there, screw gauge is there. Least count of vernier caliper is nothing but 0.01 centimeter, and screw gauge is nothing but 0.001 centimeter. So for a smaller length, like the width of a paper, like that, you can measure with the help of this. But what about the largest distances? Suppose from the earth, if you want to measure the distance between a planet, you want to measure how far this planet is, what you are going to do. So in NCERT chapter, one method is given that is called parallax method. Let us understand what is this parallax method. Suppose you have a point on a wall like this, and you are just looking this point from your left eye, keeping the pencil in between. Close your right eye. From the left eye, see this point on the wall in the line of pencil. Correct? Now you close your left eye and see this thing with your right eye. Then naturally from the right eye, this will be your line of sight, and you have to move your pencil like this. This movement will give you the angle, and this is called parallax basically. Due to this parallax, this angle has been generated. Hmm. This is the right eye. This distance is called basis. So naturally, if this distance is very large, and this is B, so naturally here your D will be B upon theta. How this has come? You have seen, suppose you have a circle. In this, the whole length is 2 pi r. Suppose this is your arc length. And this is your theta. So when the full angle was 2 pi r, 2 pi, then length was 2 pi r. Now when it is theta, then naturally it will be theta r. And theta r will be nothing but this is the arc length. So this r is nothing but s upon theta. So this is how this formula has come, taking this as the arc length. If it is very large, then naturally this will behave as a arc length. So this parallax method is basically used for finding out the distance of planets and diameter of planets. The basic principle is same. What you do, suppose if you want to measure a distance of a planet, suppose planet is very far away, like this, and from the two locations on this earth, please measure this angle. From this location, from some reference point, take the angle, and from this second location, from that very reference point, take the another angle. The difference will give you this angle. And suppose distance of the planet is like this, d, and this distance between the 2 points on the earth is b. So your distance of the planet is nothing but v upon theta. Please note that this is in radian. Okay, radian means 360 degree is equal to 2 pi radian, or 180 degree is nothing but pi radian. So please note that whatever values of theta you are putting here, those will be in radian only, otherwise you will commit mistake. Now this is how this distance of the planet can be measured. For measuring the dia of a planet, what you can do is, from the same location on the earth, Suppose this is the planet. From the same location, on the Earth, you can measure this angle. You see this point and then see this point from some reference point. You measure the angles and the difference will give you this angle. Since these distances are very large, so with this, naturally this will be diameter. Diameter is B. So naturally B is nothing but D upon. Sorry, D into theta. So this is how you can measure the diameter of a planet. So by parallax method, we can measure the large distances, like the distance of the planet or diameter of the planet. But what about measuring the small distances? Like if you want to measure the size of a molecule, which is of the order of 10 raised to minus 8 meter to 10 raised to minus 10 meter, then what you are going to do? So in this vernier caliper, screw gauge, all these things will not work. Even optical microscope uses the visible lights whose wavelength is 4000 angstrom to 7000 angstrom. Means 1 angstrom is nothing but 10 raised to minus 10 meter. Even this also will not work, because this will give you 10 raised to minus 4 into 10 raised to minus 7 to 7 into 10 raised to minus 7. So, but here the molecular size is minus 8 to minus 10. So even this will also not work. But now electron beam microscopes are there, then tunneling microscopes are there, which can measure such small sizes. In NCERT chapter, this oleic acid experiment is given to illustrate how to measure the diameter of the molecule or size of the molecule. Oleic acid is nothing but basically a soapy liquid. Correct? So idea is it has got large molecular dimension. So idea is to make a layer of this soapy liquid on the surface of water. Then naturally, if you measure the thickness, then it will give you the diameter of the molecule of the soapy acid. So what they have done in this experiment, 1 cc of 1 cc of soapy liquid is dissolved in alcohol and made a solution of 20 cc. So in this 20 cc solution, the concentration of soapy liquid is only 1 cc, and they have take out one drop and again put this drop and make the solution of 20 cc. So it is the two-way process. Basically, concentration of the soapy acid is reduced. Here it was 1 by 20 times, and it has again been reduced to 1 by 20 times. Correct? Suppose n drop of this solution, n drop, is taken and volume of 1 drop is suppose V, then volume of n drop will be NV. Now this basically n drop of this, they are basically in a trough whose area is a trough of water. Hmm. Let us understand here. Suppose this is a trough like this. And its area is A. In this, water is there. Now this n drop of soapy liquid is put with lycopodium powder so that it spreads on this. So these are the molecules of the oleic acid. So Raju, this is the basically NV is the total volume of N drops. So thickness will be nothing but of the oleic acid, basically NV upon 20 into 20. This is the basically volume of the oleic acid present in N drops, and this divided by area will give you the thickness of this layer, and thickness is nothing but this is diameter of the molecule. So this is how they could measure the size of the molecule of a oleic acid. This is called oleic acid experiment. This is very simple basically. The only thing is most of the people, they just leave these things, considering these things as difficult one, but once you understand what is happening, what mechanics is going on, then these things are very easy to understand. And once you understand these things, you are not going to forget. Now we will go to the next thing. Now we will talk about range of lengths. So far we have seen the measurement of lengths. So it has got a wide range because the tiny nucleus of an atom, it is of the order of 10 raised to minus 14 meter. And our universe, its size is 10 raised to 26 meter. So you see, it has got a very wide range. Even before this, size of the proton, it is also of the range of minus 15. So for measuring these smaller distances, this micrometer, nanometer, femtometer, all these units have been developed. One micrometer is nothing but 10 raised to minus 6 meter. Like that, one Fermi, it is also called femtometer. This is 10 raised to minus 15. Or you can say one nanometer. It is 10 raised to minus. So for smaller distances, these units have been developed. For larger distances, of course, like one astronomical unit. What is this? This is the distance between Sun and Earth. And of course, one light year is there. It is the distance covered by light in 1 year. What is this one one astronomical unit? is equal to is nothing but 1.496 into 10 raised to 11 meter. So this is the distance between the sun and our earth. Then likewise we have 1 light year is equal to 9.46 into 10 raised to 15 meter. Of course, you already know this is speed of light, c is speed of light, and this is equal to 3 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second. So that way, if you see, these are, we have smaller units also and we have larger units also catering for the smaller and larger distances. One more unit which comes into picture is that is 1 parsec. What is 1 parsec? 1 parsec is basically the distance at which average radius of Earth's orbit subtends an angle of 1 second. It is in, it is called 1 arc second. Let us understand parsec. It is basically 3.08 into 10 raised to 11 meter. Sorry, it is 16 meter. What is basically this parsec? Suppose you have sun, you have Earth's orbit, this is Earth. So this is the distance this is 1 arc second. This theta is 1 arc second. And what is this? Basically, this is nothing but one astronomical unit. You can say one astronomical unit where at a distance when it subtends one arc second is called one parsec. So this is also another way of define parsec. So these are the larger units for measuring the very large distances. Now we will go to the next topic, that is measurement of mass. This is a very fundamental physical quantity and it is the basic property of matter. That means it does not depend on temperature, pressure or location. Means mass will remain same everywhere irrespective of temperature, pressure or location. And SI unit of the mass is this. In chemistry, because of smaller units of masses like masses of atom, the mass of atom is very small. So it has been defined in the unit of one unified atomic mass unit, that is AMU. It is atomic mass unit. It is simply is called U also. And it is nothing but 1/12 of the carbon 12 isotope, and its value is equal to the 1.66 into 10 raised to minus 27 kg. And with the help of this, we can find the mass of other elements in the terms of AMU like this. And like length, mass has also got the wide range. That is mass of electron, that is of the order of minus 30. So order of the magnitude how do we define? It is nothing but whatever power is there on the 10. So just see minus 30, it is 30 basically. Here it is 10 raised to 15 mass of the universe. So this is also minus 30 to 55 order. Like that, it's a wide range connection. It's very wide range. So depending upon the instrument, there will always be uncertainty in the measurement. Uncertainty in the measurement. And this uncertainty is nothing but this is called error. In simple terms, suppose if you measure a length with vernier caliper which has 0.01 centimeter least count, and if you measure the same length with the screw gauge, which has, this is the least count. So that means this is more precise, and naturally in this it will have less error than this vernier caliper. So like that, measurement, whatever instrument or you take or whatever fashion in which you measure the length or mass or whatever it is, it will have some kind of uncertainty, huh? And it is because of this fact only, to remove this kind of uncertainty or to make the measurements more and more accurate, a lot of instruments are coming in place with higher and higher resolution. So precision precision is basically related to instrument. If the instrument is having higher resolution, that means your measurement will be of high precision, or your measurement will be very precise. So please understand these things: resolution, instrument. So precision is mainly concerned with instrument, whereas accuracy, what is accuracy? Accuracy is nothing but how close your reading or measurement is to the true value. That means, suppose length of a paper is 2.00 centimeter, or length of a some something which is, this is basically true value. And if you measure like this, that means your reading is quite accurate. And suppose your reading is 1.93 centimeter, then naturally your reading is not that much accurate. Hmm. So accuracy is just, you have to see how close is your value is with the true value. Whereas how you can find out the precision of an instrument? Suppose if you take an instrument A, and if the same thing you measure and the values are 1.93, 1.98, like that, and suppose B instrument is there, and you take two readings, and suppose these are the readings, then which is more precise? This B instrument is more precise, because this is, here the readings are very close, 1.99, 2.01, they are very close. Two readings you have taken, and they are very close to each other, and average value, it is giving you the true value. Whereas in this case, one reading is 1.93 and another is 1.98. Lot of difference is there between the readings. That means it is having less resolution, and that's why the readings are less precise. So this gives you the idea what is accuracy and what is precision. Huh? So now we will go to the next slide. This is errors. Errors are basically systematic errors, random errors, and least count errors. This is what has been given in the NCERT chapters. Systematic errors are basically instrumental errors. Instrumental errors are nothing but, if suppose there is some error in the instrument itself, like suppose you have a thermometer, and if graduations are marked incorrectly, like above normal temperature is suppose 98.6, it is given as 100 centigrade, then naturally, sorry, Fahrenheit, then naturally this is the error in the instrument itself. So first of all, before taking the measurement, you have to look to the instrument whether any instrumental error is there or not. Like in case of vernier caliper, you may have zero error. If you take the measurement, naturally you are going to commit mistake. So you have to account for zero error. Like that in screw gauge also, zero error can be there. So these are the kind of instrumental errors can be there. Imperfections. Imperfections means imperfection in technique or procedure. Means suppose if a thing is there and a laid down procedure is there that its measurement should be taken in such a fashion, and suppose if you don't follow that, so naturally in the measurement some kind of errors are going to come. Like that, then of course personal errors are nothing but basically it is your way of doing the thing. Suppose if you see the measurement, like scale is there and you have to see from the vertical the graduations when it is aligning. Suppose if you see the graduation from this side, naturally your reading is a little bit shifted. So these are some kind of, these are kind of personal error. Means you have to see, it depends on person to person. So you have to avoid the correct method, you have to follow, then only you can minimize the errors in your measurement. It is very important. These are small things, and when the things are of the order of 10 raised to minus 12, 13, then these errors become very important. Or when the measurements of astronomical units, then these errors become very important, very appreciable. Now we come to random errors. What is random error basically? Random error is nothing but which happens irregularly. Like while taking the measurement, you may experience some kind of vibration, or while taking some electrical measurement, your voltage may fluctuate. All these things, they give rise to random errors. Hmm. Mechanical vibrations of experimental setups. Uh, so these kind of things are random errors. They can happen in your measurement. So you have to see these kind of errors while taking the measurement, whether they have happened or not. Least count errors are basically instrumental, like vernier caliper, since it is having least count is this only, so it has its own limitation. So, and instead of vernier caliper, if you take screw gauge, then naturally you will have more precise answers. So these errors are basically will bound to come. They will be there. They will always be there. It is very difficult to remove all the errors. But what you can do is you can your effort should be to minimize the errors. Uh, that is the main motto of reading all these things, studying all these things. Okay, now we will go to the next slide. Now we will talk about type of errors like absolute error, relative error, and percentage error. Let us see what is absolute error. Suppose there are some measurements you have taken of the same thing. You have taken measurements like A1, A2, A3, A4, like that. So naturally, the mean value of all these readings will be A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4, like that, divided by, suppose these are n, so this will be the mean value. Uh, Now, this is taken as the true value because this is the most true value you can have by taking the mean of all these measurements, whatever you have taken. Now, what is the absolute error? Absolute error is nothing but what is it is the difference between the A1 minus mean value. And of course, this is always positive. These readings may come as negative or positive, but you have to take these values as positive only. That's why this modulus is there. Now you take the mean of this also. This will be nothing but delta A1 plus delta A2 like that divided by n. So what is absolute error? Absolute error is nothing but these are the absolute errors, and this is the mean absolute error. Now we can very well write what is the value can be of A, whose readings are this. This can be nothing but A mean or A mean plus minus delta A. That means A is nothing but it is A mean minus delta. It lies between. So this is the error part. This is the main value. This is called absolute error. These are all absolute errors. Now, what is the relative error? Relative error is nothing but it is the delta A mean divided by A. This is called relative error. And what is the percentage error? Percentage error is nothing but percentage error is nothing but delta A mean into. So if you understood the absolute error, then of course it is just the relative to AM, and this is percentage. So there is no problem in this. So this is how this will be more clear when you will do the examples. For understanding sake, I think these things are clear. These are the measurements you have taken of same thing A. Your measurements have come like this, and you have to take the mean, then you have to find the absolute errors, take the mean also, and this is how this will work out. Now we will go to the next slide. So previously we saw the how to find out the absolute error in one physical quantity. Suppose you, you have the sum of physical quantities or product of quotients, then how to find out the errors? So suppose you have a physical quantity like this, which is the sum of A and B. Hmm? A is having A plus minus delta A, and B is having error S plus minus delta B. So in case of addition, it will be simply A plus delta A plus, sorry, B plus minus delta B, or you can write it as A plus B plus minus delta A plus delta B, like that. So here this will be your Z plus error in Z. So what will be the error in Z will be nothing but delta A plus delta B. This plus sign is taken here to have maximum error. Our idea is also always to find out the maximum error one measurement can have. Then only we can take care of for its safety. So like that, suppose Z is A minus B, then again this will be Z will be nothing but delta A plus delta B. Here again plus sign will always be there to have maximum error. Now what about product or quotient? Suppose you have Z is equal to A upon A into B, suppose. Then your Z plus minus delta Z will be nothing but A plus minus delta A into B plus minus delta B. And in this case, if you will simplify, then it will be like this. AB plus minus B delta A plus minus A delta B plus minus A delta A into delta B. Now, suppose if we divide it by Z, Z plus minus delta Z, if we divide it by Z, then what will happen? This you divide it by Z, and this naturally Z is nothing but AB. So this you divide it by AB. Then what will happen? This will be nothing but 1 plus minus delta Z upon Z will be equal to 1 plus minus delta A upon A plus minus delta B upon B plus minus delta A delta B upon AB. This you can ignore because delta A into delta B are very small. So their product will be much smaller. So this will give you nothing but delta Z upon Z will be equal to delta A upon A plus delta B upon B. Here it will be a plus sign. Likewise, suppose Z is equal to A upon B is there, then again the same thing will come, delta Z upon Z is equal to delta A upon A plus delta B upon. So this is the maximum. Here plus sign is there because this will have the maximum relative error. So this gives you an idea of combination of errors when it is plus, when it is minus, then when it is product or it's a quotient. Then basically this is how you can find out these are the relative errors. This is how you can find out the combination of errors. Now we will talk about significant figures. This is very important topic. By significant figures, we mean that suppose you have 2.54. This is the figure. That means these two digits, they are reliable. And this last digit is unreliable. Means reliable digits plus one unreliable digit makes the significant figures. Here, three significant figures are there in this measurement. Actually, suppose you have a vernier caliper and its least count is 0.101 centimeter. Suppose you measure any length of any object, it is like this. This gives you some sense. But suppose if you write this, then this does not give any sense because this type of measurement cannot be measured by vernier caliper. So it is useless to write unreliable digits on and on. So this gives you an idea also that how precise your instrument was. Correct. Now, suppose you have 2.54 centimeter. By changing the units, this can be written as 0.0254 meter. Does it change the significant figures? Now let us see what are the rules basically for the identifying significant figures. All non-zero figures are significant. Then our second rule says zeros between non-zero digits. They are significant. Our third rule, what it says? Zeros to the right of the decimal but to the left of non-zero figures. If it is less than 1, then these are not significant. With this rule, this is less than 1. So all these zeros, they are non-significant. So significant figures remains 3 only. Here it is 3 only. Correct? Then trailing zeros. Without decimal point. They are non significant. In like in this case, we can have an example like suppose we have 123 meter. This can be written as 123 centimeter. Now in this actually three significant figures are there. In this also three significant figures are because trailing zeros, they are not significant. Correct? Now another point, if you have trailing zeros, trailing zeros after decimal, then they are significant. Like 3.500, it has got 4 significant figures, or 06900, it has got 4 significant figures. Correct? Best way is to convert the digits into exponential form. Like if you have 4700 meter, this can give you 747. Suppose this is 4.7 meter, then of course this will be nothing but 4.440. This is centimeter, or this will be nothing but 4700 millimeter. Now here, of course, here 4 significant figures are there. Here also 4 significant, but here if you see here, it looks as if it is 2 significant figures are there. But so why this confusion is? So it is better you convert the things into exponential form. This can be written as 4.700 into 10 raised to 3 millimeter. Now within these two, if you see, then here also 4 significant figures are there. Correct? So then the confusion is removed. So it is better to convert the digits into exponential form. This will give you better idea of finding out the significant figures, and you cannot commit the mistakes. As a thumb rule, you can say if the number is greater than 1, then without any decimal, then trailing zeros are not significant. Like 4700, then actually these are not significant, but for a number with decimal, then trailing zeros are significant. So these are the thumb rules with which you can find out the how many significant figures are in a figure. When you will do the problems, then this will be more clear. Correct? Now, to have more idea about significant figures, let us solve this problem. In this, how many significant figures are there? Of course, it is 1. Then in this, of course, 3. Because in this, these are not significant figures. Here, 3, all non-zeros are there. So 3 significant figures are there. Here, a trailing 0 is there after decimal. So naturally, it will have 4 significant figures. Likewise, it will also have 4 significant figures. 0 in between the non-zero figures is also significant. So it will have 4 significant figures. Again, in this case, these are non-significant. So it will also have 4 significant figures. So this is how you can find out the significant figures. Now we will go to the next slide. Rules for arithmetic operations with significant figures. So we will see how mathematical operations are conducted. Now let us see these examples. First of all, let us take addition. Suppose these 3 figures are there and you are adding them, you are getting this result. But now, since this is having the least significant figure, that is 2. So this result should also be reported in 2 significant figures only. This is the correct answer. Like that, here 3 significant figures are there, 3 significant, but here if you find out from the rule, you will find that this is 1 significant figures is there. But if you convert it four into 0, 0 into this minus 2. So this is the correct way of representing this thing, and in this three significant figures are given. So you must report your answers in correct significant figures only. In the same way, suppose if you find out the density, suppose this mass of the some object is given as 4.237, it is having four significant figures, and volume is 2.51 significant figures, cc. Here it is only three significant. So your answer should also be having the least significant figures what the digit is having. Means this should be answer. This is a wrong way of reporting the answer. Your answer should be 6.69. It should be rounded off, eh, and only three significant figures should be reported. So this is how the addition, subtraction, and multiplication or quotient is reported in significant figures. This is very important, otherwise your answers will go wrong. So always represent your answers within the significant figures, and the thumb rule is just see which digit has the least number of significant figures, only in that number only you report your answers. Now let us see how you can round off the uncertain digits. Suppose you have the answer of 6, 3, 2, and you want to make it to three significant figures, then it can be simply 1.63 because this digit is less than 5. Suppose if it is 1.637, then of course this can be rounded off to 1.6364. So this is how you can round off the digits. So thumb rule is basically if it is less than 5, then this digit will not change. If it is more than 5, then this digit will be enhanced by 1. Suppose if your last digit is 5 only, like 1.635 or 1.625. In this case, since your last digit is 5 only, so here if it is a odd number, then you will make it even number, and if it is even number, then it will remain even number. So please do understand. Okay, so this is how the rounding of the uncertain digits करना चाहिए. These are the some of the thumb rules. We do the rounding off. Now we will talk about the dimensions of the physical quantities, then dimensional formula, then dimensional analysis, and checking the dimensional consistency of equations, and deducing relation among the physical quantities. This is a very important chapter, subtopic in this chapter, and let us understand one by one. Actually, in the beginning, I have talked about quant physical quantities, that is fundamental quantities, and those were length, mass, time, then of course temperature, then current, then substance mole, and then luminous intensity. Here its units were Kelvin, ampere, then mole, and then candela. And sorry, ammeter. Then it's now we will write how in dimensional analysis how they are represented. This is represented as L, M, time, K, ampere, mole, and then there's candela. This is represented as basically ampere. Then we talked about the derived physical quantities like force. This was nothing but M into A. It was nothing but kg meter per second square. So this force is represented in fundamental units like this. Now in dimension, dimensionally we can write it as M, L, and T. Now it is minus 2. This is the dimensional formula for a physical quantity, force. So suppose you are asked what is the dimension of volume, then you know volume is equal to L meter cube, or you can write it as, so this is the dimension of, so any physical quantity can be represented in this form: m to power a l to power b and type power c and so on. Correct? So this is the dimension. This is the basically fundamental thing. What do you understand by dimension? Representing any physical quantity in terms of m, l, t, k, a, mole, candela, like that. You can represent any physical quantity. You can write down the formula. But this formula does not give you about anything about any constant if it is there. Correct? Like suppose force is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 q1 q2 upon r square. It will have these dimensions, but this is a constant. This will not give you any idea about this, but still, if you know any, if you know the dimensions of any physical quantity, roughly you can form the formula. Let us now further see how this is going to work. Now suppose you are asked to find out, you are asked to write the dimensional equation of dimensional equation of suppose volume, then what will be the dimensional equation? It will be m0 l cube and t0. Velocity, velocity we know meter per second, then you can write it as m0 l1 t minus 1. Correct? You can write it as for the force. What is the dimensional equation? It is nothing but m l t minus 2. m0, sorry, here it is m1. So like that, you can represent any physical quantity formula in the dimension form. Correct? Now let us talk about dimensional homogeneity principle. Means whatever equation is there, like suppose you have an equation like this. This we have studied, this is a valid equation, but let us dimensionally check it. This, what is this? This is distance. Naturally, its dimension will be L. What is U? U is nothing but velocity. T is time plus here. What is acceleration? L T minus 2, and here again time. Now let us check whether this is dimensionally homogeneous or not. Here T minus 1 is there, here T is there, so this will cancel out. So what is remaining here? L. Here T square is there and T minus 2 is there, then again this will cancel out, and again this. So this is a dimensionally homogeneous equation. So all the equations, they should be dimensionally homogeneous. If they are not dimensionally homogeneous, that means then the equation is not correct. Now, suppose let us see, let us find out dimensionally how we can find out any formula. But time, suppose time period is dependent on L, length of the string, gravitational, G, gravity, and suppose M. Then this must be equal to K, L, A, G, B, or M, C. Or dimensionally we can write it as L means L, A, G is nothing but acceleration, that is minus 2, B, and M is here C. T is here, you can write it as M 0, L 0, T 1. Here again, if we write it as, then L will be nothing but A plus B, T will be minus 2B, and M is nothing but C. If we equate the powers, then what we are getting? A plus B is equal to 0, minus 2B is equal to 1, and C is 0. Correct? So from here we can find out it is B is equal to minus 1 by 2 and A is equal to minus B, or we can write it as 1 by 2. Correct? So these are the values we have found out. Now let us put these values here. L 1 by 2, G minus 1 by 2, and M 0. This will give you K this will give you K root L upon G. And we know this formula as 2 pi root L upon G. So except the value of constant, you got the correct formula due to this dimensional analysis. Correct? So this is how you can find out the formulas, you can deduce the formulas. If you know your physical quantity is dependent on what fundamental quantity. Correct? So this was all about chapter units and measurement. I have tried to cover most of the things, almost all the things which have been given in your NCERT chapter. And this full lecture gives you the full course within this chapter. So revise, whenever you want to revise, you have to see only this one video, and all your concepts, all your uh, concepts will be revised in one go if you understand it fully. So this was one first chapter. Now my next video will be the second chapter of NCERT physics subject. So till then, goodbye. If you like this video, please do subscribe my channel, and we are going to cover the full syllabus of physics starting from the chapter 1 to last, first for the 11th class and then for the 12th class. Thank you very much.